Oh, we have a whole bunch of new.
Yep, out of Blizzard last week, but now we have a Blizzard of products.
Blizzard of products.
What's this?
This is an update to our standard 1 meter HDMI cable. We now have the official Raspberry Pi HDMI cable, which looks pretty much just like the one before, but it has this really awesome embossed Raspberry Pi logo on it.
Okay.
And we thought that's kind of cool. Comes in Adafruit black.
Okay. Next up.
This is the Toolshed coloring book. This is a JP recommendation. This is a really cool book. This author went into his granddad's shed and took out all the things and just drew them all. It's a coloring book, but just this awesome drawing style.
You like tools? You like coloring? This is for you.
Yeah, it's got a lot of cool stuff.
Next up.
There's also a matching Toolshed journal for, if you're a person who keeps a journal, a lot of people do. This one is like a pretty standard blank journal with grid ruled lines, except it also has some empty pages and also pages that are illustrated with those Toolshed drawings. They look really cute.
Grab them and put it on the overhead for a second, because we got this overhead.
We do.
We call this overhead rent. May as well get our money's worth from this overhead camera.
Hold on, give me a second. Let me focus. Okay. So this is the Toolshed journal, so it has some of these illustrations. So just like tools and drills and hammers. It has both blank pages. Here's like a little U nail. And some illustrated pages. And then it also has sections that are lighter colored. Some have grid lines. So like a big range of like pages for your journal. I kind of like it. It's a fun
Show
little journal.
the coloring book.
Yeah, I will.
We'll keep moving.
And then this is the coloring book, which just has just these gorgeous, gorgeous drawings. Hold on. Let's zoom out. Has just amazing detailed pen drawings you can color in or just appreciate for their own beauty. Cool. Oh,
Okay.
Nice lamp. I like this one's my favorite. Just love
Yeah.
that detail. So Toolshed coloring book and Toolshed journal.
All right, next up, we have some filament.
We have 2 new filaments from Proto-pasta. They both look nearly identical. This one, I can't even tell the difference. One is conductive composite 3mm. So this is like a high conductivity filament. We've done a couple experiments with this kind of stuff. I think now we're carrying it in 3mm. What's cool about it is you can use it for like capacitive touch sensors. You can't put a ton of current through it, but maybe some like small LEDs or maybe a neopixel.
Go to the overhead.
You can extrude it and then make like a conductive, flexible material.
Yeah.
And this is the iron composite. This is kind of neat. It's the PLA, but it has like a rough metallic feel. It smells a little bit metallic, and it's rustable. So if you put water on it and let it oxidize, you'll get like a bit of a rusting effect, which could be neat for cosplay or props where you want it to have like an aged look. So this is a kind of a unique filament. There's the iron composite and the conductive composite. So these are both available in 2.85, aka 3mm filament, which is what the most common 3D printers are using nowadays. So we're trying to stock more 3mm.
Okay, next up.
This is a bare conductive lamp kit. This is kind of neat. It's like you get this bare conductive board, which is a little microcontroller and a bunch of conductive paint, and then you can build, I think, 3 or 4 different lamp designs that are human reactive, and they're really cool looking, and they're made like pretty much completely out of paper. So this is what you get. You get that board, which is sort of round. It's like a little bit like a Gemma, and it has white LEDs and conductive pads, a USB cable that you can use to power and program it, and a tube of electric paint from Bare Conductive. And I have a demo of this lamp because it is pretty cool looking.
Yep. Demo.
This is one of the lamps that you can build. So this one has all the conductive elements brought out here, and then as you touch them, you can make it brighter or dimmer. And then since I got it working, I'll carefully show off what's on the inside. You can see all these conductive traces go back and then paste into the little light up board. So this is like fun for like designers or people want to craft. You don't have to make the lamps that they give you. You can make your own, but they do give you out the cardboard cutouts to make it easy to build these lamps, and they all look really, really cool.
Okay. Next.
Okay, we have the AM2320. This is an I2C. sensor. It looks a lot like the DHT22 or DHT11 sensors, and it's almost like exactly the same idea. It fits into a breadboard, except instead of using a one-wire like protocol, like a one-pin protocol, it uses I2C. So this means it works with just about any microcontroller, whereas those DHT sensors were sometimes difficult to get working on new platforms because they needed like very specific pin timing, and sometimes Linux computers wouldn't play very nicely with them. In comparison, this sensor is low cost, does temperature humidity, does a fairly good job at it, and again is I2C compatible. Yay, a standard that everyone can agree on for the most part. So it's one of our least expensive and easiest to use I2C temperature and humidity sensors. Probably very handy.
All right, next up, wheels.
Okay, hold on, I gotta get my demo. So this is a wheel. Not just any wheel. So we've had wheels for servos, and it actually looks a lot like a servo wheel, but this is not a wheel for servo. This is a wheel for TT type motors, which are these DC plastic gearbox servos. And I have one here because you're probably like, what are those? They kind of look like this. They're not always yellow, but sorry, 1 second. They have like these yellow, they tend to have yellow bodies. There's a gearbox in here. They have a little DC motor here. And this wheel clamps on nicely. I've seen a lot of these motors that are low cost, and we're going to try to get some for the store, but the wheels are often like not so nice. This is a really, really nice wheel. And it lets you make this motor into like a little moving robot. You can see it's nice and even, doesn't wobble too much. And just a basically good wheel, has a nice rubber tire. You can remove the tire if you want, but it's nice and grippy. And I like that it's like skinny. So if you put on a robot, your robot doesn't become like enormous. It has good grip. Comes with a little screw to attach it as well. So it's a nice TT motor wheel. We also have wheels for servos. So if you have a continuous rotation servo, find the thing that looks just like this but says for servos.
Okay. Next,
WiPy. This is an update. This is the WiPy 3. The update here is it's still using ESP32, still has MicroPython running on it. It gets a bump in the chip. The chip is a slightly newer revision, and it gets a ton more RAM and a ton more flash. I think it's like 4 megabytes and 8 megabytes a piece. If you're running MicroPython and you're like, I wish I had more RAM, I wish I had more storage, this product update will do what you want.
okay, next up.
The Kano Computer Kit. This is an update as well, but it's a pretty big update. So the Kano Kit is a DIY, build your own Raspberry Pi computer kit. You get a keyboard, you get a Raspberry Pi 3, you get this lovely case. The update here is they used to provide a speaker, but now they don't. Instead, they provide like a NeoPixel ring. I can show this really quickly on the overhead.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
Box with me.
It's not an official NeoPixel ring. It happens to be kind of like one.
It uses NeoPixel compatible. I mean, I don't know exactly, what chip they're using. I think it's NeoPixel because it's 4 pin. So you get this lovely little booklet, which is what they're like really well known for, and then this keyboard touchpad, the cables. It's a really nice touchpad and keyboard. I think it's like custom made for them, and then power adapter plug. And this is the new thing. So it used to come with a speaker. Now it comes with a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 LED RGB ring. It's probably NeoPixel compatible. You can use their software to program it. And I guess for a speaker instead, this pops on. You can make a little button, so you have a single button as well. And of course the Raspberry Pi computer and SD image. So if you want to build your own computer and it takes you step by step, it's like a really easy to get started with introduction to build your own computer and software. Kind of takes the Raspberry Pi and makes it even simpler and easier. And I think it's a good update. I think the NeoPixel ring, the LED ring is a nice swap because a lot of monitors these days have speakers built in, so you don't really need a separate speaker.
There's two kind of like Pi computing platforms. There's PyTop and there's Kano. And I emailed both of them and I said, hey, here's something that we noticed. A lot of people are using Circuit Playground with these things.
Yeah.
So they get a PyTop or a Kano and then they program a Circuit Playground with it. So we made that suggestion because that would be even better, I think, one day if it, had that.
plugged into your TV. So this is the update. So this is we have it now. I believe it's the same price. It just swaps out that speaker. I think it updates a couple of the components and updates the speaker for an LED ring.
Okay.
Boom.
Next up, we have a 3D printing handbook.
We do. This is a book that was recommended by Noah and Pedro. It just kind of goes through everything you need to know about 3D printing, like in depth, with really great, beautiful photos and lots of text.
Yeah.
So, not just FDM. Do you want me to grab it? And
Yeah.
paste
That's
it?
what I got.
Okay. It's very technical. Goes through like different finishes, applications, material properties, how to do overhangs, how to like all the different kind of machines that you may encounter, and nice images showing you like the output capabilities. So, if you're like, okay, I think I need to use 3D printing for what I'm doing, there's more than just MakerBots. There's dozens of different types. This is a metal 3D printing machine, and the different processes you can use. You may find this useful. Like, this is kind of neat. Like, which process do you want to use? And there's all these different choices based on the tolerance, the material, the flexibility, the strength. So it's good for designers, engineers, people who are actually going to be not just like, you want to maybe make some stuff, but you want to make stuff that you're going to be either selling or producing or using in industrial design processes. But I think also advanced makers, like people who really want to take their 3D printing to the next level, will find this book very illuminating. It's nice. I like that it isn't like a lightweight book. It has a lot of depth to it. That's not a 3D printing joke. I mean that.
Yep. Okay. Next up, DragonTail.
Let's start the show.
Well, we also were going to be
Go ahead.
talking about Pi 3B Plus, but this is my favorite project this week.
Yeah. So this is if you have a microbit, we've carried the microbit for a while, you've noticed that it doesn't have headers that plug into a breadboard. So we wanted to make something like the cobbler that we did for the Raspberry Pi that allowed you to use it with the breadboard. And the T-cobbler is like kind of the design we started with, but we made a couple of improvements to it to make it even better. So this is the microbit that you may know and remember, and it has this edge connector. And the edge connector also has these large pads you can use an alligator clip with, but there's all these little pads in between that you can't alligator clip to. So that's where having a really nice breakout is useful. So this breakout has an edge connector in it, you can see. And when you plug this in, it only fits one way. You can use the buttons and the LEDs and stuff. And I can, program and power it. And over here, you get to see all the different GPIO, and we break out every pin available. Some pins are shared with the matrix, and they have a little square, which you might be able to see. Some have analog capability, and they have a little triangle next to them, and some are shared with the buttons, that's A and B. We also give you all the power pins, so you get maybe 10 pins more than you would if you just use the alligator clips. And also it gives you access to the I2C pins, which you don't really get. There's like I2C pins that are available that you don't really get on the P1, P0, 1, 2, and 3. You can also do stuff like anytime you need 4 GPIO because you want to do SPI, or you want more analog pins. There's more analog pins available. We also added a little corner over here, and it plugs right into the rails of the breadboard. We only do it on one side because depending on whether you have a half-size or full-size breadboard, it does have slightly different spacings. This way it works on both. And that way you can get your power rails, your plus and minus, also wired up without having to do any work. So it's a little bit wider, but we also already had this width from the connector, so we're like, well, why not? Let's just make it wide and easy to use. You can see here, that's a simple program that's just lighting up the LEDs. You can program the microbit still in CircuitPython, make code, or Arduino using our guide. This just breaks out the pin. It doesn't make any level shifting or changes. It just makes it easier to use in a breadboard. So I think it's very handy. Especially if you also want to have a sturdier design. I think alligator clips, they slip a lot. And then there's a dragon on the back.
Yeah.
Thanks to Phil B. So that's the DragonTail. It's a new product
Okay.
from Adafruit.
Next up, 3 in the morning, we were awake and we were launching the Raspberry Pi 3B Plus. So some of you saw it online. We do this because we love Raspberry Pi. And it's also...
As you can tell from this
that's
logo.
because, yeah, we got this graphic. So there's a new Pi on the block. It's Pi 3 Model B Plus. Lady Ada, this will be in the store soon.
We
It's
have
not,
an order.
Yeah, sign up on the page right now. They will go quick. But just to get to what everyone wants to ask, what's the difference? What's new?
I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
So the Raspberry Pi Model B Plus, Raspberry Pi 3 Model B Plus, adds a couple things. It's not a huge update, not like the Pi 2 to Pi 3 or the Pi 1 to Pi 2. It's the kind of like a polishing up update. So the Ethernet chipset has been changed. It used to be 100 megabit. It is now a gigabit chip, but you can only run up to 300 megabits per second. That's still 3 times faster. The Wi-Fi chipset has been updated. It now does 5 gigahertz in addition to 2.4 gigahertz. So if you have 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, your performance is better. I think the Wi-Fi performance overall is still a little bit better. The Wi-Fi chip and Bluetooth chipset is now under a tin, which means it can have FCC modular approval. This is a big deal if you're using the Raspberry Pi in a product and you want to take advantage of that wireless stuff, but you don't have to go through all the regulatory FCC and CE tests. You don't have to do as much testing if you can use modular approval, which you can now with the 3B Plus. The chip it's the same chip, the 64-bit BCM something. It now runs at 1.4 gigahertz, so it got like a 10% speed bump, and it has a heat spreader / heat sink on top, so it can run a little bit faster without needing an external heat sink. If you want to add a heat sink, go for it, but it will run even better even without one. So that's where we have a really cool thermal photo as well. The GPIO haven't changed, the camera hasn't changed, the display hasn't changed, the USB ports haven't changed, the HDMI, power, and the AV jack haven't changed. Next to the GPIO port, there is 4 more pins now. Those are for PoE. So when you use Ethernet, you can use 4 extra wires to have power go over them. Now, it doesn't work just plugging in a PoE router to the Raspberry Pi. You need a PoE hat, power over Ethernet hat. It's not available quite yet. A couple of photos on the internet that the Raspberry Pi Foundation has put out. If you're a gung-ho person, you might be able to get it working just by wiring up some module you can find. For other people, I think just wait for the hat. It'll plug in and allow you to power and run the Pi only from a single Ethernet cable. So that's pretty exciting.
Yep. So sign up on the product page. Once we get these in stock, we will ship them.
Yes.
But you have to get the email and then order it because we don't do back orders, especially for stuff like this.
That's for your safety.
There is some benchmarking, though, that you wanted to talk about. So here's some imagery. This is the Pi 3, and then this is Plus. So this is different. What's the difference between these two?
So see there on the chip, that little square that's red, you see it's like green, and then it goes quickly from green, orange, yellow, red, and then white. White means it's like 9 degrees C, which is really, really hot. You don't want the chip will start to self-slow down a little bit when you'll never catch your Raspberry Pi on fire, but if it gets too hot, it will start to slow itself down on purpose to keep the thermal runaway from happening.
So Pi 3 gets hot.
So it goes up to 90 C. But if you go to the 3B Plus, you'll see the chip, it's all red. It stays below 90 C. It never gets white. And the heat is spread out instead of like being right on the processing. It's spread over, which means it is easier for it to dissipate that heat. Okay. So it can run much faster without a heat sink. It runs much faster without overheating.
But if there were benchmarks, I could see how much faster. Oh, here they are. Okay. So, it looks faster.
So Drystone is a good benchmark. There's a lot of benchmarks you can see. There's a big bump from the Pi 1 to the Pi 2, about twice, and then to the Pi 3, another order. And then the Pi 3B Plus, even though it doesn't become like a quad or, it hasn't upgraded the chipset to like a much bigger chipset, that thermal property, and they also tweaked some things with how they manage voltages, as well as a slight speed boost to 1.4 gigahertz. You do get better performance, maybe looks like about 10% performance increase just on raw processing power.
All right, but how fast is Python GPIO? Because
this is also important. A lot of things that a lot of times you don't get to use just plain processing power. It's also like how fast can you interface with the GPIO pins. So this is a good demonstration because it's Python, it's GPIO. Python GPIO are both kind of slow, but you can see even here that moving from the Pi 3 to the Pi 3B Plus, you get about 10% increase. You're now getting up to 300 kilohertz, which is pretty good for just bit banging through Python.
Yeah, and then Ethernet's faster. How much faster? A lot faster.
It's a lot faster. So what was keeping Ethernet from being faster before was, well, some of these chips don't even have Ethernet, but the ones that did, you were kind of stuck below 100 megabit because the chip that they were using was a 100 megabit chip. And everyone's like, I want gigabit Ethernet, which would have made it 10 times faster. Now, the new chip on the Pi 3B Plus is gigabit capable, but the Ethernet chip has to go through the USB 2 subsystem, which is limited, and you have to share it with all the other devices on USB 2. So it is much faster. It's, almost 3 times faster, but it's not true gigabit. So it's a gigabit chip, but you will only get about 200 to 300 megabits per second out of it. Still much, much faster than before, but just to keep people's expectations in line, it's not going to be 10 times faster.
Okay, so that's in the store. We're going to get a bunch, sell a bunch, but just keep in mind, sign up, when you get the email, order it, wouldn't do back
And
orders.
all for the same price,
Yeah.
$35.
Yeah, and it'll be limit one per customer for at least a while until production ramps up.
Yeah, we want to make sure everyone has a chance to get one, so we will limit it.